Ethiopia offers plenty of surprises. It is, in parts, remarkably lush, and yet hunger stalks the land. For years, aid groups have been encouraging people around the world to give. I'm just one of the thousands of donors to do so. I was keen to see how my sponsor child and her family were faring, so I ventured south into Ethiopia's rural heart to find out.
Zanish. Tuma. Hi. Andrew. I only ever see photos of you and your report card, so it's wonderful to see you and to meet you.
14-year-old Sainesh Digallo has been part of a World Vision program all her life. She lives on a small farm nurtured by her father, but he can't grow enough to feed his family. I was surprised to discover the family gets virtually nothing of the money I donate. When I challenged World Vision, they told me that my donations and those of others go to community projects such as education. So at a time like this, when food is scarce, Sainesh and her family harvest whatever they can. I'd been told by World Vision that Sainesh was learning English at school and was improving, so it was disconcerting to find that she speaks no English at all.
What have you been told about World Vision and the support that someone like myself gives you?
When Sainesh Digal was included in the program, she was the only child in the family. Now the family has 6 more mouths to feed. Do you know what that is? Koala. The Digallo family is warm and welcoming, and a few small gifts seem to mean a lot. Too often, though, they go hungry, as do so many. Here's one reason why.
There is grass, the country looks green, the animals can graze, but the harvest, which was dependent on previous rains, has totally failed. So it looks okay, but it's not okay because there's no food from the previous harvest.
This is not the scene you'd normally associate with famine, but then it's no longer just drought that causes people to starve in Ethiopia. Since the country's devastating famine in the mid-80s, the population has doubled, farm production has fallen, and now world food prices are soaring. Ethiopia is caught in an endless cycle of hunger. A quarter of a century after the world heeded Ethiopia's call for help, the country still can't help itself.
People like Bob Geldof and other artists just poured a lot of money to this country. So to see another famine in this country after 24 years is a sad thing.
Sophia Hussein and her family are among the 8 million Ethiopians, that's 10% of the population, who are in desperate need of food aid. Hussein's husband is sick and she bears the burden of feeding her family. She has a small plot of land, but this season it failed to produce any food. The youngest child is malnourished. The Hussein family lives about 200 kilometres south of the capital, Addis Ababa. Ethiopia relies on this agricultural region to grow its food, but not this year. The local population of Shashamene has turned to aid groups for survival. Médecins Sans Frontières is providing food and medical treatment for the malnourished. Children are weighed, measured and checked for tuberculosis before being examined by doctors. More than 16,000 have been treated here. Sophia Hussein's kids are among the more fortunate. They're malnourished, but not critical. She gets a ration of food and is sent home. Other mothers are encouraged to stay. Their children, dangerously underweight, are admitted to the stabilisation clinic. The situation here has alarmed the United Nations. John Holmes, the Under-Secretary for Humanitarian Affairs, flew in to assess the extent of the crisis in the south of the country.
I think on the global scale, this is probably one of the most urgent situations we have.
Now the rains have fallen, the worst may be over in this area. But further east in the Afar province near the Somalia border, there's no relief.
They've had 3 successive years of rain failures, and you certainly wouldn't call it green there. It's a brown dust bowl, and that's a different situation altogether. Because the animals don't have grazing, livestock are crucial for the livelihoods of these nomads, and that's where it's particularly serious.
Australian Valerie Browning has an intimate understanding of the plight of Ethiopians.
The baby's born small from the mother's malnutrition, probably. So basically we'll have to treat the little girl with antibiotic now. Just very recently we hit the worst. We hit literally death by hunger of little children. And I hadn't seen that in 19 years.
Valerie Browning is reunited with her family after spending weeks walking through Ethiopia's remote Afar region, visiting isolated villages. She settled here 2 decades ago after falling in love with the land and its people who are now suffering.
Ethiopia is suffering more and more drought. The droughts are coming one after the other and very viciously. I think we're in a very, very urgent time. If we don't work now, right now, then we've lost the day. I really believe that. And the worst thing that happened, the last thing that happened, I'm ready for this meeting.
Valerie Browning works for a local aid group providing food and development assistance to the 2 million nomadic pastoralists who live in Afar.
Hunger death is humiliating, it's difficult for the family hasn't been able to cope.
This community is on the edge of Afar.
I drive through here all the time. They've recently had rain. And it's recently greened up, but they've been having a pretty severe drought here too.
Temperatures here regularly soar beyond 50 degrees. It's an inhospitable environment. There's little vegetation for the livestock and little food for the people.
So what would they be eating? What would they be surviving on?
assuming. What to tell you? Injuru? He says he has milk. Ani afar. Ani bir yelim.
These people are lucky. They're receiving foreign aid assistance. They get grain or money in return for work. But it isn't just the drought that's hurting these people. Rising world food prices are compounding the crisis.
We've seen grain prices, just the bag of grain, go from what it was 12 months ago, 90 birr a bag. The cheapest bag you can get now is 300 birr. In some parts of Afar, it's 600 birr. Now, who can buy that? You have to go hungry. You have to go hungry. Most Afar families are down to 2 meals a day, most. Some are down to 1. I've seen them mixing tiny bits of grain with huge amounts of water, boiling it up and calling it porridge, and drinking that as a meal. And it's just a very thin broth is what they're eating, you know? And they are desperately hungry people.
While millions of Ethiopians are starving, the country's economy is booming. And there are plenty of signs of that in the capital, Addis Ababa. High economic growth has been encouraged by the world's wealthy nations as the country strives to meet its Millennium Development Goals.
The issue here is that the government is certainly pushed far too hard by the first world to have to say that we are performing well. So we're working on this massive macro policies. We hope this will filter down to the people, but we're seeing increased poverty at the base level. Now, the base level is not part of the economy. It's becoming a vicious cycle.
Ethiopia's economic growth has come at a cost. Inflation has soared to 40%. Here at the main produce market in Addis Ababa, food is plentiful but hardly affordable.
So prices are going up?
Yeah, very much.
Can you give us an idea of how they've gone up?
Three times bigger than the former price.
So you think there is a crisis, a food crisis?
Right. Absolutely, there is crisis, and there is starving. Children and women are starved.
For the first time in a generation, famine has come to the capital. It's the early hours of the morning in Addis Ababa, and a queue has been growing through the night. Word has spread that wheat is being sold here at government-subsidised prices.
Are you struggling to feed yourself?
Yeah, because there is shortage of food.
How many do you have to feed? Do you have a family?
Yeah. I have 6 families, 6 people.
Is there a problem?
Yeah.
Well, government security agents have just told us that we're not allowed to film here, that we should move on. Clearly, there's a lot of sensitivity about seeing images like this of people in need in the middle of the capital, so desperate.
But it's not just the media that the government tries to intimidate. Aid groups are also harassed. Some have been banished from the country.
So he wants to see the permit?
No aid organisations would talk about the intimidation for fear of reprisals from the government.
The majority of the population do live under dire poverty. And, well, in Ethiopia, well, millions are getting poorer and poorer every year.
Gebru Asrat was a member of the government until 7 years ago, when he was expelled for criticising what he says were oppressive and undemocratic policies. International aid organisations accuse the government of understating the current food crisis.
They don't want to tell the world that there is also another side of the story, another picture of the country where millions are starving.
Despite repeated efforts, no one from the government would talk to us about the scale of the problem. The population has exploded to more than 80 million. As a result, land is over-farmed and food production has fallen. The UN worries that the country has developed a culture of dependency.
What we want to do is to make the population in these rural areas more resilient, to improve the whole rural economic infrastructure, and to make sure that farmers, even small farmers, can be more productive, can produce more income, and therefore we can get away from this dependency syndrome.
But Gebru Asrat says the government is not doing enough.
During the rainy season, a lot of water pours to the surface, but the governments so far have not harnessed this water and use it for irrigation work.
Are you saying then that Ethiopia could be self-sufficient?
Really, it could be more than self-sufficient. It could be even an exporter of food for its neighbors.
For now, though, most Ethiopians, like the family of my sponsored child, struggle from day to day. Sainesh Degallo's parents realise they must change their way of life if this endless cycle of hunger is to be stopped. They believe education is the key to a better future for their children, and their eldest daughter is listening.